It seems you can't go anywhere without being bombarded by news of the pandemic and of big city riots. Perhaps it's just because it's the news, or perhaps those bent on the destruction of America are ensuring that you see it. We'll put some context to these two issues in this episode of Analysis Behind the News, where we provide the perspective that you can use to restore American liberty and independence. Isn't it interesting that the American phenomenon of racial justice, due to the perceived amount of police brutality, has actually gone global? Either they have the same problems or they're just showing solidarity. Nonetheless, Mr. Alex Smith, a geographic information system analyst in Tucson, Arizona, assembled an online map of more than 4,300 cities around the globe of protests that have taken place since the end of May, with the bulk of these in the US and Europe. However, he maps protests on the continents of South America, Africa, and even a handful in Asia. Knowing how hard it is to motivate anyone into doing anything, we can be sure that these demonstrations certainly were not spontaneous and were assembled through a rigorous and coordinated effort. In a radio interview with WBUR, Mr. Smith mentions that some people who submitted some of the locations mentioned they had never had a protest of any kind in their politically red area. Given the enormous media coverage, it's not too surprising that it would hit flyover country and many points in between, but globally? The Council on Foreign Relations publishes an email newsletter by the name of Global Governance Update. In its July 2020 issue, it stated, "The Black Lives Matter movement is critical to advancing freedom and human rights worldwide." Well, given all of the BLM ties to Marxist-led organizations that have helped to organize these protests and subsequent riots, and the anti-American goals they hope to achieve, we know that the complete opposite is true of that statement from the CFR. Yet Stuart Patrick, a senior fellow at the CFR, wrote, "Such global scrutiny has become very intense today, as foreign attention focuses on the deaths at police hands of Floyd, Taylor, and so many other Black Americans." In late May, Michelle Bachelet, the current UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, demanded serious action from the United States to address the latest in a long line of killings of African Americans by U.S. police officers and members of the public. A week later, 66 UN human rights monitors released a pair of extraordinary statements publicly decrying the fundamental racial inequality and discrimination that characterizes life in the United States for Black people and denouncing the legacy of racial terror that remains evident in modern-day American policing. Well, that's pretty strong from an organization whose very own peacekeeping troops are accused of spreading cholera that killed 10,000 Haitians, as well as accusations of committing large-scale rape and murder of men, women, and children on missions around the world. Not to mention that the position of the UN that government grants rights is totally the opposite of the founding principles of America. But knowing that the globalists have a totally separate agenda than that of Americanists, we should look at these global organizations as using subversion to move ahead their agenda at the expense of American freedom and independence. Therefore, it's time to take a closer look at the Council on Foreign Relations. While we look at their influence, keep in mind that they are pushing very hard for global government action regarding BLM and the pandemic. The August 10th, 2020 issue of the New American is called Directing the Disorder. The CFR is a deep state powerhouse undoing and remaking our world. In the issue, the New American has painstakingly researched where CFR members serve in the government, the media, think tanks, consulting firms, NGOs, and other influential organizations. The information gives you an idea of just how deep CFR influence permeates throughout those groups that are crafting policy. The magazine looked at 15 presidential administrations and charted the prevalence of CFR members serving in various capacities. What it found proves what the John Birch Society as a whole has been saying for decades, that the Council on Foreign Relations is the premier organization influencing our government to lead the globalist effort to build world government, altering countries and populations into what they call a new world order. The cover story helps to set the stage for understanding how the CFR is using its influence to exponentially grow government involvement in our daily lives, specifically using the COVID-19 pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement. Now let me highlight an important example from the article. The New American senior editor, Mr. William Jasper, wrote, "The whole world has gone insane and the lunatics are in charge of the asylum. At least it looks that way to any rational person surveying the escalating revolutions that have engulfed the planet in the year 2020. The revolutions to which we refer are the COVID-19 revolution and the Black Lives Matter revolution, which, combined, are wreaking unprecedented havoc and destruction, political, social, economic, moral, and spiritual, worldwide." Mr. Jasper reveals the deep state connections that have enabled COVID-19 to become used as a convenient excuse for the tyranny being experienced worldwide. He also wrote, "But like the COVID revolution, the BLM revolution could not possibly have succeeded in so rapidly rending our society's fabric asunder without the crucial calculating organization of many deep state operatives. To begin with, the BLM crowds would never have even gotten off the ground except for the tens of millions of dollars from George Soros, CFR, and many millions more from CFR corporate and foundation spigots." And he rightly pointed out, this incredible drama unfolding before our eyes has not come about overnight. It is the work of a deep state cabal of ruling elites that has controlled both the Democratic and Republican parties for decades, and has embedded its operatives throughout our political, financial, industrial, educational, cultural, military, and intelligence institutions. Freedom has never been in greater peril. The CFR revolution for world control is moving into its endgame phase, but the globalists do not have all of the aces they need. In fact, in their current haste and heavy-handedness, they are stirring a sleeping colossus. If enough liberty-minded patriots throw all of their efforts, prayers, and resources into the battle now to awaken, educate, and activate their fellow citizens, we can yet save freedom. And save freedom we can. If these full revolutions have done anything positive, it's to expose their intent on changing the way Americans live. Many are waking up due to the tyranny that is being laid at their doorstep. So please, take every opportunity to help Americans see who is behind this and what they can do about it. Distribute this issue of the magazine or the inexpensive reprint that is now on its way to our warehouse. Show them the behind-the-scenes connections and offer them a way to help by recruiting them into the only organization that is locally organized to expose and stop these CFR operatives. The John Birch Society stands ready to help you. Links are in the video description. I'm Bill Hahn for the John Birch Society, and until next time, stay informed, stay active, and stay safe, Patriots.